Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the Recovery Capital Podcast. My name is Joanna Dolan, and let me tell you a little bit about what Recovery Capital is before everyone else introduces themselves. So Recovery Capital is the interior and the exterior strengths and supports that we have that help us to obtain, maintain, and sustain recovery, both at the early ages and all the way into like 20, 30, 40 years of life. So to that end, we have, of course, all of our guests are very, very special. And this one is near and dear to my heart because when I got sober, I was 20. And I wish that there had been someone around, something, an organization around like the one we're about to talk about today. But before we get into that, Amy, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Amy DePietro. I am a person in long-term recovery. I am Joanna's partner in crime for our recovery capital journey. And I am eager to chat and kick it with Sarah here today. So that's fun of me.
Sarah, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sara Varga, and professionally speaking, I am the head of school for Phoenix Recovery Academy, located in Frederick, Maryland, downtown Frederick, Maryland. And personally, I also identify as a person in long-term recovery. And I have a pretty amazing family and a super energetic 5-year-old who absolutely keeps me on my toes, sometimes more than the students here at the school do. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, one of the things that we get to do on a regular basis is we get to interview our heroes and have like conversations with them that matter. You are definitely one of my heroes for what you have done.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, facts, man. Facts.
I'm like super excited because honestly, up until recently, like last year, I didn't even know that Phoenix was a thing.
Oh, wow. And I'm really excited to just get on my soapbox and share with you guys.
Yeah, girl, get right up on there because I'm like so ready.
All right. Well, jumping up.
Yes. Tell us about it.
All right. So here's the story in a nutshell. Probably about a little over 5 years ago, I through some connections within the recovery world and professional world that came together, the co-founder of the Phoenix Foundation of Maryland, John Edmonds, connected with me, knew I identified as a person in long-term recovery, also knew what I did professionally. And professionally, I love to work with teenagers, especially teenagers who are in recovery. They are some of the most amazing, creative, passionate, dynamic human beings that I think exist there. They humble me every single day. And he knew that this was my passion professionally. And he had an opportunity to try to develop a recovery high school in the Washington, D.C. area. And so he asked if I wanted to jump on board with this project, and it was a no-brainer. Absolutely, sign me up. Let's jump into this. Interestingly enough, John is a graduate of what was called the Phoenix High School that was located in Montgomery County, Maryland. He graduated over 30 years ago. Has been clean and sober ever since. And interestingly enough, that school was the very first recovery high school in our country.
Wow.
Ever.
So the Phoenix has actually been around for that long?
So that school, unfortunately, no longer exists. It's not around anymore. And so John was a part of this work group, invited me to be a part of that work group to get it up and running. What transpired over the course of those 5 years is he and I and a group of several other really passionate folks. Joanna being one of those people, like she was really involved with this from the beginning in creating the school here in Frederick, which now we call Phoenix Recovery Academy. And it is a high school where I say to every student, every parent that walks through the front door, we take our education, our high school education, as seriously as we take our recovery. That is what we expect from people here. We get to blend both of them.
I love that. So, like, give us a dummy down answer. Like, if I were to say to somebody in a sentence or two sentences, like, what is a recovery high school? What is a recovery high school?
So recovery high school is basically, like, we all know what peer pressure is. We've all heard that term, negative peer pressure, negative peer pressure. So recovery high schools essentially takes what we think is negative peer pressure and turns it on its head. And we try to create an environment where there is positive peer pressure, where high schoolers get excited about being sober, and they get to come to school where they know they're not going to be sitting next to their drug dealer in class, where they're not going to be the drug dealer in class, where they can have that support that they need to be sober in high school, you know. And we can all remember what it was like to be back in high school, like being a person in recovery or not. You know, high school is a difficult time for a lot of people.
Yeah, no doubt.
We go through a lot of as teenagers, right? Like, and so that's what we recovery high schools do, is they really support teenagers through what is a difficult period of time to begin with, and then throw in like trying to get clean and sober. It supports them through that whole process, and it's magical. That's my word for it. That's a dummy down version. It's magical.
It's magical positive peer pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, so I'm not, all right, what is positive peer pressure?
So I'm trying to think of a really good example of positive peer pressure. So here's an example. So, in school this week, there was some tension between some of the students, right? We're kind of walking through what we call, learning what emotional sobriety is. Not just physical sobriety, but now that we're physically sober, how do we conduct ourselves? How do we get along with people, even when we don't like them? And so here's an example of positive peer pressure. One of the students shared with the rest of her peers saying, hey, I'm feeling really hurt because I'm seeing that you guys are struggling getting along. I want to be a part of the solution. What can I do to support you all in that? Or it's we're doing an afternoon check-in, and there's a student who says, you know what, I'm struggling with urges to use. And then the person sitting right next to them, that's not a teacher, that's not a staff member, will turn around and say, hey man, you want to ride to a meeting tonight?
Wow.
That's positive peer pressure. They do the support for each other. Not me, not the staff. They support each other. That's positive peer pressure.
That's so wild. Oh my God, I have like so many questions. So so how do you get to, okay, wait, I don't even know where to start. How do you get to be enrolled?
Mm-hmm. So to be enrolled, you just got to have a little bit of willingness to want to work a program of recovery, even a nugget of willingness. And so here's kind of where the magic happens as well, too, is so I don't expect any parent or any student walking in through the front doors of the school to be super excited to be here, because we're not necessarily walking in on a winning streak. There's obviously been some things going on with the students and with the families. However, they can come in here and say, okay, stepping foot, through our threshold is significant enough. Then I can get that student to connect with another student here. And that's where the magic starts to happen again, like where they can start to see, okay, I'm not the only one who's ever felt this way. I'm not the only one who's been struggling with staying clean and sober. I'm not the only one who's, been fighting with my parents. I'm not the only one who's, failing my classes. Here are other kids who felt exactly how I felt, and they're figuring it out and making it work. And so, there's got to be that willingness. That's the key. That's the key ingredient.
How, okay, and does it follow the same kind of age guidelines of like a high school?
Yeah, so we're 9th through 12th grade. And we are, we're approved high school through the Maryland State Department of Education. So we are a private school model. We are approved by the Maryland State Department of Education. Our graduation requirements are just like any other traditional high school graduation requirements would be. And we have some flexibility within that. We get to do some really, I'll share with you some really cool things we get to do with students too, because we have that flexibility. And oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget what your question was.
Is it like the standard, and you answered it, it is like freshman through senior kind of,
Yeah.
and so you touched on something, right? Like not necessarily walking through the door on a winning streak. So, but to me, it's, and of course I'm a few years away from high school now, right? that chapter's closed for me. But
my gray hairs should get away from me. Yeah.
technically, I could have kids in high school, which really freaks me out. But so if that's the case, but it's not a punishment being there.
No, we do not want this to be a punishment. No. And in fact, so some people will say, oh, do you have kids who are mandated to be there? And I will say this, there are students here who are on probation. We would want them to be compliant with what is being requested of them. We don't want this to be a consequence or a punishment. We want this to be a supportive, safe, sober school environment for them.
Yeah, it's funny because so much of that I'm assuming is perception, right? So I'm thinking to myself, like I shared with you before this podcast, like first time I ever tried to get sober, I was 16 years old. If my mom had been like, I'm sending you to a sober high school, I'd have been like, get bent. That's not happening. I love you, you're my mom, but like, we're gonna duke it out in the front yard if you think that's happening. But like what an amazing advantage. So there's got to be a lot of that you deal with. Like I would think like the orientation, like getting people orientated to seeing that really like this is a gift that you don't even know. You're not even going to understand the weight of how empowering this is for you right now for maybe years to come.
Right. And I will tell you the magic, that's going to be like our word. The magic comes when I can get a new student who's, pissed because parents lied to them to get them here. They're like, oh, we're going to go for a haircut. And they show up here, which has happened, by the way. Yeah, that was not a happy camper. And I can get this other student to sit down and talk, and they're like, man, I was so mad at my parents when they told me that I was going to have to come here. And the other student will say, I'm so mad, and I totally get where you're coming from. Like, can talk at their level, because when you think about it, like for people in recovery too, when I first came into recovery, I'm actually putting a whole lot more credit into this person who's got 6 months than I am into the person who's got 6 years, because I can't fathom 6 years. I cannot wrap my brain around that, but I might be able to wrap my brain around 6 months. And so knowing that, we know that these students are going to be able to wrap their brain around a peer of theirs doing this more than they're going to want to listen, to me or to mom or to dad. Ultimately, they start to get there. You got to be listening to your principal when you're in high school if I'm asking you to do something, or it's not going to work out well. But that's where the magic happens, is seeing it blossom between the students.
Joanna, let me stop and let you come in because I got like questions for days, and I want to kidnap Sarah and like understand all the secrets for success. I think it's so freaking cool what she's doing.
It is cool, right? I told you.
Man. Yeah, like just hashtag I love her already.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
And I'll tell you, like, and this is not just me. There is there is a community behind this school, a community of people. And I want to say this really clearly, we would not be here if the Frederick community was not so supportive of this. We could not be doing this without the Frederick community. And I'm talking about businesses, I'm talking about the Frederick recovery community, donors, small and large, the teachers here, the interns here, the staff here. I mean, there's a community of people behind the school.
I freaking love that.
Oh yeah.
What? So my next question, I'm going to keep rolling.
Well, wait, let me jump in.
Jump in.
Okay, so logistics, right? What are your enrollment goals? What's the max capacity, and what's classroom sizes?
Nice.
Okay, so I'm going to go backwards. Classroom sizes. Right now, we are at 5 students. So currently, largest classroom is going to be 5. Ultimately, never more than 10. We want to keep classrooms really small. We know that's what works. Maximum enrollment, probably 30 to 40 when we are at maximum capacity here. Right now, we're hoping to be at the end of year 1 at 10 students. That was our goal. We're at 5. We don't necessarily see that as a huge setback because we opened a high school in the middle of a global pandemic.
I thought you were going to say none. We're virtual right now. Yeah.
And we did it in person in the middle of a global pandemic.
Wow.
So we're actually really, really excited to be at 5, and we want to grow incrementally. I think that's really important. We know we don't want to grow too fast, too soon, because we want to be able to continue to meet the students where they're at and meet their needs as we grow.
Good for you, because, so, I mean, this is not a close comparison, but take a look at Wegmans. The grocery store chain. I mean, they're a family operated business, and they only open 2 locations a year. And the reason they do that is because they care so deeply for their model and the way they treat the people that work for them. It's just the first thing that comes to mind, because honestly, I love Wegmans, but yeah.
Me too.
I love Wegmans. Yeah. But that's so smart. Like, it's so, because what you're talking about is people's.
So Wegmans just got like a massive
unpaid
for plug.
Wegmans. You're talking about like setting these kids up for an opportunity for great success. Obviously, it's a marathon, not a race, but that's so cool that you guys are trying to just, because the first thing I thought of was, why isn't there one on every street corner? Why aren't there sober schools everywhere?
Would you have gone to a sober school?
Hell no.
That's why there's not one on every street corner.
Absolutely not. I did more drugs in my elementary or my high school. I did.
You got an early start.
No, just
What's really funny is the students will sometimes come in and they're like, wait a minute, Miss Sarah, you were in high school at one point in time? I'm like, yes, I was in high school at one point in time. Yeah, that did happen. And they're like, what were you like in high school? And then I pull out pictures. I have pictures in my drawer of me when I was in high school. And they're like, no way.
Yeah, and that's Miss Sarah passed out in a field, and that's being on a cooler, and that, what I mean?
And then I tell them this story, and I'm like, guys, when I, was initially called to this position, I realized I needed to make an amends to my high school principal.
Yes.
Whoa.
What did you say?
Whoa.
I mean, I said what, we're told to say. I said, I told him, I said, look, and here's how it happened, was the announcement became like Facebook official that I was going to be head of school, and he liked it. And I was like, oh.
Wow, no pressure.
Oh. And so I was like, I owe him an amends. And so I reached out and I said, coming into this position, seeing that you Facebook liked this page, I realized that that I did a lot in high school that I owe you an amends for. You know, what I did was I wasted your time. I wasted your energy. You know, I was not productive. I shouldn't have done what I did. I said now even more so being a parent, because his daughters were my age too. So, you know, put that together. I said, you know, I did not make good decisions. And I said, you know, it was wrong what I did. You know, if there's anything I can ever do to make this right with you, please let me know, because I'm willing to do that. And the response was remarkable. He said, you know, I'm so proud of you. This is amazing. You know, there's nothing that you need to do except continue to do what you're doing. And he said, Sarah, it takes one to know one, because I gave my high school principal a really hard time too.
Oh, wow, though.
Full
Man,
circle
Sarah,
moment.
yeah, full circle.
Yeah.
Sarah got me thinking, like, I missed a couple things along the way. I might have to reach some people.
I know, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there was a trip to Minnesota.
Oh,
Yeah. It was one of those like, oh, I forgot that one.
yeah. Oof.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay, oh, we got to ask the nerdy questions.
Yeah, go get
Do
your
it.
Get my nerd on. Okay.
Get your nerd on.
So what I'm hearing is that a kid with learning disability is going to be great there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we, I will say, okay, so let's nerd out for a second. We know that substance use disorder, especially in adolescents, can really strongly correlate with learning differences. Absolutely. And so diagnosed, undiagnosed, the majority of the students here learn differently. And we know that, we understand that. And so we want to make sure that our classrooms are set up and geared for that. One of the ways we do that is one of the teachers that we have here comes from teaching in a special education school. So she knows a lot of different strategies for teaching students who learn differently. And I mean, so you'll see a lot of different things on IEPs, like preferential seating, you know, ability to take breaks when need to, extended time. That's built in here. We're able to do all that stuff. In a classroom of 10, you've got preferential seating. You know, if you're struggling, you know, there's one student who regularly, because in our math class right now, we're teaching multiple different levels of math. So sometimes it's hard for him to stay focused. If there's a teacher talking to another student, he goes into the library to get his work done. It's built into it here.
I love that. I love that. So, okay, so that makes me think about this. So I know from my own experience that there's a lot of traumatic stuff that comes along with using when you're really young. Yeah. And like, I'm assuming that the folks that come to the Recovery Academy also struggle with that. So like, how do you work with that in a classroom setting?
Right. And so we assume that most of the students coming here are going to have a history of trauma. You know, we've all we did some trainings in the beginning with the teachers and the staff about being a trauma-informed school, and recognizing that the behavior that you may see in class may have nothing to do with what is going on in class. It may have so much more to what's going on underneath it. And that's just the mentality that a lot of our teachers have and understand. And so a part of that is, you know, we build it in. We, you know, if a student's having a really tough time, the students and the teachers know they can always come to me to check in. You know, and that's my background is as a licensed clinical social worker. So they can come to me to check in. And there's also the understanding, like, hey, if you're coming to me to check in, this is a check-in. You know, we're going to get you grounded, get you back into class, you know, help you get what you need. It's not going to be an escape from class. Let's get you back into class. Let's see what you need. And then a lot of what I do too is, and of course my phone's going to go off in the middle of this. Can you hear that? Okay.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of what this will be as well is like clinical case management. You know, if it does come out that we've got some needs here and some unaddressed issues and some co-occurring mental health, which will happen. I mean, trauma, anxiety, depression, it's going to happen. If they're not already connected to a mental health professional, I will help them get connected, give lots of really good referrals to make those connections here.
Forgive me for this, and I should have asked in the beginning, is this residential?
No, we are not residential. So we are a day school, day program, 8 to 3 is our school day.
Okay.
Ask me in 5 years that question. It might be different.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that would be, I want to go, kind of. Like, I'm a little jelly, honestly. I
did a tour today with a student, and he's walking around. He's like, "This is so cool," and I was like, "Oh, nice! I got a willing candidate here."
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a nice change, I bet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What happens if you get well? This is 2 questions, I think. So, you guys are in Frederick, right downtown Frederick, but you can take anyone in the entire state. So,
yeah, West Virginia, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
So if you get someone who wants to come from one of those places, like, where do they stay if you're not a residential program?
That is the why in a few years we may be looking at a residential component to this, because we know that that's a barrier, because we're the only recovery high school in the state. The next closest one to us is like around Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and then up in Philly. And so because of that, we know that there may be some need for some residential, and that is a hindrance. That is a hindrance for people who live, 45 minutes, an hour, more than an hour away.
You guys collaborate with the other schools?
With the other schools? Oh, yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it is amazing. So there's a national association. It's called the Association of Recovery Schools. And it is phenomenal. I mean, like, we wouldn't be here and in existence and functioning the way that we were if it were not for other recovery schools that helped us out along the way. Absolutely. I mean, and that, I will say, almost any time I've reached out to a head of school or to an administrator within another recovery school across the country to saying, hey, what's your experience with this? Always, I've had somebody take the time to share their experience. Oh, I mean, phenomenal.
Yeah, that's so badass the way that happens in a recovery community. Like, so I work part-time in a treatment center, right? Like in an outpatient. And, we collaborate all the time with what to the rest of the world would be considered like our quote unquote competition. But, we're not competing to save people's lives, right? Like we're ultimately all trying to work together just to help plant seeds. So
absolutely.
I think that's so cool that you use that word magic. Like, that to me is the magic that happens, in the different aspects of just recovery.
Absolutely.
Is now a good time to talk about the documentary Generation Found?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to tell us about that?
So there is a really fantastic documentary, Generation Found. It is what really finally sparked the fire for all of this to come to fruition here in Frederick. And it highlights Archway Academy in Houston, Texas. And it also highlights a few... Texas?
Yeah, Texas.
Also highlights a few... what are called APGs, which are alternative peer groups. And in places like Texas and other parts across the country, there are these programs, alternative peer groups, where, and Amy, you kind of spoke to this experience. Like, at 16, you walked into an AA meeting and it was like, what's this? And alternative peer groups are meant to be that place where young people can go and learn about recovery, discover their path to recovery in a place where they're among their peers, where they're not walking in and immediately comparing it.
Wow.
And so Generation Found highlights, Archway Academy highlights the APGs, and also really highlights sometimes the disparity that can exist within the recovery community and recovery.
Tell us about the disparities, because I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's the school in Houston, and some of the APGs are predominantly Caucasian students. And there's one APG that's really highlighted in this that is for predominantly African American communities, and they didn't even know that APGs were around and existed. And they were like, wait a minute, what about our kids too? Like, why is it that these privileged kids are having access to this, but these kids in our community who need it too, right? Because we know this disease doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how old, what color our skin is, what religion we are. It doesn't matter. They wanted to know, where is this for our kids too? And so it also highlights the development of their APG.
Right on. So
yeah, hell yeah, right on.
Yes.
Yeah,
I knew you were running your face.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, this subject matter gets me so fired up. I hate that shit. The fact that we're not trying to help save everybody's lives at the same time. Come on, I gotta stop. I won't even dive down. I'll stay right.
Good for you. Stop the submarine.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop.
So let me ask you this. What are you doing at Phoenix to make sure that there is real, honest to God diversity, but not just diversity, but inclusion, right? Because inclusion doesn't happen unless there's psychological safety.
Absolutely.
Wait, hold on, Sarah, don't even answer that yet. That was a good question.
Oh, yeah.
My friend, that was a good question. I love that question. All right, go ahead.
Yep, that's a good question. Really good question. So I'm going to harken back to when I talked about how the Frederick community has been phenomenal here. And we have been amazed, astounded, and blessed with the community not only stepping up in a lot of different ways, but stepping up financially. And we know because we are a private school, we do have tuition. We also know that we don't ever, and this was from day one, we don't ever want that to be a barrier to any student accessing this school. That can't be. That's not going to be okay with us. And right now we're at a point where we have the ability to say to families, we offer financial aid, we offer scholarships, we don't want any kind of price tag to be any kind of barrier. And so that's bottom line, right? And that's just the bottom line for us, right? We also quickly learned that transportation was going to be a bigger issue than we ever anticipated for our students. So then again, really quickly, I'm shouting help to our development director, and he's like, I got you, Sarah. And I'm like, you gotta, help out. And we put word out, and we were, in the beginning, community members stepped up to help provide transportation to students who needed to get here. And now we're at a place where the community has stepped up, and we were able to purchase a van. And we have a part-time van driver who is able to help with transportation needs for students.
That's awesome.
Because those are the big barriers. Like, those are the biggies.
So while we're talking about barriers, because, sometimes people listen and they're like, I want to do something to support, so what can people do? What do you guys need support with? Like, how do they support you?
Yeah, so there's always the financial support, and they can go on our website and find ways to donate. And there are a lot of different ways on there too, right? Because I don't want somebody listening to this to be like, well, I just don't have a lot of money. I can't do that. We also have on there, or they just don't want to give cash. They want to give like in-kind donations. We have an Amazon wish list on there, you know, so school supplies, pick off some school supplies for us, you know, things like that. I mean, reaching out and like if they have a certain talent, I've had people come to me and say like, hey, you know, if you ever need a math tutor, I'm willing to be a math tutor if you need that. We've had people reach out to us, so we put out on social media that we're having a sober prom. We call it prom.
You call it what?
Sober prom.
Prom. And we learned this. We got this like full credit to Archway Academy and Generation Found movie. Like that's where we saw this for the first time, and so we're stealing the name from them. And there are people in the community who reached out and said, hey, I'd love to make some really beautiful masks that match the outfits for your students for prom. I'm like, yeah,
That's
absolutely. Awesome. Absolutely. So here's another way is we know, and this, you know, goes into like inclusion and just recognizing that, you know, some people coming to us are not going to always have a lot. We wanted to have lunches. And I originally was thinking, okay, maybe we can have lunches like provided to the students 3 days a week, and they can bring their own lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because we don't have we're really small. We don't have an industrial cafeteria. We're not serving lunches. Like, you know, we just don't have that capacity at this point in time. One of our board members has been amazing, and she reached out to local restaurants and local businesses, and then there are some like individuals who sponsor lunches, and we literally have lunches brought to us every single day.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's the power of the community.
Yes. And in that, Amy, too, you know, one thing that I see is so important within the school is that we're not only creating sober students, sober teenagers. You know, I want to see us creating good citizens, you know, that then turn around and can contribute back into the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's like one of the tenets of recovery, isn't it? Like, we want to become productive members of society.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I got it. So, I mean, I got to ask some of the other stuff that, so like, how do you hold accountable? How do you hold folks accountable? How do you redirect when needed? You know, like what, and is there a, hey, it's not working, right? Because those are the unfortunate truths.
Yes. And the hard ones, and the ones we don't ever like to talk about.
No, they suck. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it does. This is the part of my job that I hate, is having these conversations. They're not easy, and they're not fun, and they're heartbreaking. You know, and it's the unfortunate reality. And it's so important to maintain that container of positive peer pressure, that we recognize there have to be accountabilities built into this. So some of how we do that is the basics. We do drug testing here. We do it random and based on concern. So we do 2 different ways of drug testing. And I will say probably most students are drug tested twice a week, sometimes more if we're concerned.
Sure.
So there's that level of accountability. We also, you know, I'll get releases of information if they are an IOP, if they're an outpatient, if they're seeing a therapist, to talk, you know, to everybody within their network. I sometimes, if they're, you know, working a 12-step program and they have a sponsor, I'm getting released to talk to their sponsor, and not because I want to know all the nitty-gritty details, but like, hey, you know, is Joey really checking in with you right now? You know, when was the last time you heard from him? Is he okay? I'm worried. I'm concerned. So we do that. Every student who comes in within their first or second day will also create an individualized recovery plan, where we'll talk about how many meetings, you know, do you want to attend a week, and what kind. Is it refuge recovery? Is it smart recovery? Is it celebrate recovery? Is it AA? Is it NA? What is that for you? But let's find something for you. How many can you attend a week? And you're looking at that part of it. And they will fill out like a meeting keeper and, write in, and we'll check that, are you really attending the meetings that you're going to? And then, we'll see sometimes stuff on those meeting keepers that just not adding up. And we'll sit down and have a conversation and say, come on, gigs up. Like, you can't snow the snowman.
Yeah.
I know we know how to do this. Come on. Like, let's figure this out.
Been there, done that, son. You know what I mean?
I know, but part of me is like, well, what sort of stuff are they putting on their thing that isn't adding up?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many times that you can forge a signature and not look like it's like completely made up. It's
Doom.
Yeah.
True, you're right.
And
There's
a part of that positive peer pressure is like, ultimately we want them holding each other accountable, and they do. They're really learning to do that to some extent too. And then it comes down to this, right? So if we have a student who it's not a one-time blip, it is a full return to use, and we're seeing this on within behaviors, we're seeing this within their grades, we're hearing from the parents, we're seeing it on the drug tests, that we will call a family meeting, we'll sit down and say, hey, look, this is what we've agreed to when you first came in, this is what you committed to, what's going on, how can we help you? We're not going to take the hard fast, like, you're out of here approach. It's like, we're going to give you some chances to turn this around. We're going to give you some chances to turn. Do you need more support? Do you need referrals to IOP? Do we need to steps? How can we step this up? And if there's still a lot of reluctance and resistance and continued use, then we talk about whether or not we're a good fit. Whether or not we need something more intense than a recovery high school.
And then at that point, are you guys considering like, hey, we're not just going to just turn you loose. Like, we're maybe thinking like you may need adolescent inpatient, right? I mean, it sounds to me like you guys are providing interventions often and whenever necessary so that you don't get to that point.
That's our hope, is that we don't. That's when we have, it's not, it's a fortunate part of our reality.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, I'm not a statistics person when it comes to addiction, because those numbers to me, like that, I hate that. I don't want to look at that. We're people, we're not numbers. And, but the truth is a lot of us don't get this thing on the first go round, and we need all kinds of, beat you down, gut punches along the way to get us to where we're ready to make a change. And it's great that you guys aren't so like punitive. Again, like kind of going back to before, like nothing about this is punitive, right? Like that's pretty cool.
It's not going to work. And we will have those non-negotiables. We will have those things there. But some of the students who have unfortunately left, we will say, hey, if you need to go and seek treatment elsewhere, and you want to come back to us, let's talk about that when that comes. Let's talk about it. Yeah, if we're a good fit at that point in time.
Correct. Because I know, again, I was 16. It was my senior year of high school. I was drinking every day. I was cutting because I was in much pain from some traumatic experiences that my family had gone through and I had gone through on a personal level that, I would have been not the positive. I would have been a terrible person at your school. You know what I mean? I would have wanted to create disturbance. I needed to be put somewhere to kind of like have some pretty rigorous, boundaries put on me so that I could then take advantage of something like that.
Right, exactly. And so like in my career, I've worked in a lot of different places, one of which is more residential settings. And, I would see like lots of gains, and then students get ready to graduate, and then it's like, okay, so what comes next? What comes next? Where's that buffer? Where's that threshold? And if a family couldn't afford, another step down therapeutic program, it's like, so then what do we do? How can we provide these supports in this container to maintain this progress? And I really see recovery high schools for students who are in recovery and working a program of recovery to be that step down, that just logical, natural once we're,
Sure.
getting through those other layers.
It's just so interesting too, right? Because I talk about this all the time with my sister. Like, man, when we went through school, I wish that we had learned more practical life skills. Like, what does a credit score mean? And how do you balance a checkbook? Not that like the main subject, math and your science, English, history, all that stuff was super important. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I felt woefully unprepared graduating from high school, going into college, turning 18, all of a sudden credit cards are getting thrown at you right and left, big subjects. Like, honestly, I lost my virginity in high school. Students are going to come across things like that. I was not a sober person when I lost my virginity, right? Like, those are subject matters that I'm sure if you haven't already started addressing, you're going to have to at some point, right? Because I'm assuming you're co-ed, right? And
Yeah.
so, or even not. That doesn't even matter anymore these days. Now that I say that, I would.
True.
Like, all the better if it was an all-girls school. What a great opportunity.
Oh my God, Amy.
Well, I'm just saying, kids are kids.
I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm just saying, well, yeah,
kids are kids. Like,
Right?
they're just a bunch of horny little teenagers that make poor choices. You have an opportunity here to really like make an impact, because you and I started this conversation before we got on camera, and you said something that I love, which was stopping drinking and doing drugs is just the beginning.
Yeah, just the beginning. It's just the beginning.
That's just the tip.
Just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. There's so much more that we have to learn to do. A lot of this week here at the school with the students has been, how do we get along with people when we don't like them?
Ooh, right. That's a good one.
Adults.
How do adults do that?
That is hard for adults. That's hard for me.
I know a ton of adults that don't know how to do that. There's days I don't know how to do
it. Yeah. How do you get,
I know how, but I don't want to.
Remain respectful, right? How do you remain and not go off on someone? What I'm hearing from them, how do you not pop off on the kid sitting next to you when you're really frustrated or hurt by him?
Sure.
Or her. How do you do that?
Yeah. How do you not bully? How do you deal with people on social media? Right? That seems to be the primary way that human beings communicate nowadays. So, how do you refrain from making maybe not the best choices on your social media platforms? Because guess what, boys and girls, that's not going away, right? Like, it's a lot of stuff that you guys are touching. Man, that is so much. And now I'm thinking, like, God love Sarah. She's got a 5-year-old, like, you just want to keep them in a little bubble, and you can't.
Yes. And no, you can't.
You can't keep them in the bubble.
Uh-huh. And those, Amy, like, those are the hard conversations I have with parents. When they come to me, like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I'll say, sometimes it's, okay, I think you could try A, B, and C. And sometimes it's Al-Anon. You need Al-Anon.
Yeah.
I'm going to strongly suggest, what is your support? Because ultimately you can't control their decisions. So how are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to do that, mom and dad? Or guardian, aunt, uncle? How are you going to take care of yourself?
Right, because that's something we haven't even really talked about. Like the great news, and I'm being, of course, completely sarcastic, is addiction is the family annihilator. I mean, it's not, I'm sure you guys maybe felt this way too. I thought for years the only person I was hurting was myself. Said every person in recovery ever or in active use. I'm not hurting anyone else. We all know that that's not true. And even more so, oftentimes in my experience, as the person trying to get better in recovery moves in a positive direction, often the loved ones do not, because they're living their lives waiting for the other shoe to drop. Oh, so having said that, what support are there for you? I mean, hopefully you're not a one-woman show. Hopefully you have, okay. Sarah's like, God.
Yeah. No, that is my mind. No, there are a lot of supports, and we have a lot of supports for the parent. Well, we have found, because we know there are a lot of supports for the parents too, right? Because we know that we've got to that this is a family disease, and we talk really openly about this being a family disease. And a part of that individualized recovery plan that every student develops when they first come in, there's a portion in that where we're talking to parents about what are you going to do to take care of you. What do you, and giving them a lot of resources and a lot of support around that. You know, do you need some help finding your own therapist? Do you want help finding Al-Anon meetings? You know, do you need help finding your own AA meetings? You know, what is that going to look like there? And especially now with a lot of stuff being virtual, there are so many free virtual parents,
Yes,
caregivers that they can access. Amazing. And we also do once a month parent guardian meetings here, where we all come together, you know, talk about a different topic each time. And then, gosh, coming back to like, you know, taking on the barriers to make sure this is all accessible is when we have that meeting with the parents and guardians, we provide dinner because it's on a weeknight. I don't want them to have to worry about that.
yeah.
And we simultaneously will have a recovery meeting for all of the students, so they don't have to worry about where their student is.
That's perfect.
Well, it's those little things, right? Like your school, which kind of falls under a bigger umbrella of being a part of an institution, right? Just like a college or high school. But you're trying to be institutionalized, right? Treating, Joanna, I'm going to test my knowledge. You're treating your students like resources.
Yes.
Yes.
Good job. Good job.
Man, you would never know I sell French fries for a living. That just made my day. I'm really just. Sidebar.
Yep.
No, I think that's great because, you know, like I work with adults, right? And I work with young adults, you know, from time to time. And I mean, the number of times that the young adults' parents will call me up and, you know, like want to tell me what to do and, you know, like want to like pave the way. And it's like, you have to stop. You are a barrier to their recovery.
I'm sure it's very hard to hear. I mean, not having any children of my own, like I can't imagine what that does to a parent to hear that.
It's hard.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I handle it? How do we handle it here?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's important to have those tough conversations. And here we can do like brief family therapy if we need to. You know, if I need to do some negotiating or have some tough conversations with parents. And what we'll do as well is, you know, if it's really, really difficult and there's lots of stuff entrenched, and the family's open to it, we'll find some referrals for family therapy too, because that can always be a great outlet and a great resource and a great place to start to unlearn some of those dynamics.
I love that. I love that.
Speaking of referrals, what is your referral source? Like, how are you getting fed possible students?
So it's interesting. The majority of it is word of mouth. They hear about us. Some of it is the school system. Some of it is juvenile probation. There was one student who filled out their own application, and I go to call mom, and mom's like, I didn't realize my child had filled out this application. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to meet this student.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Dude,
that and other adolescent treatment providers. That's been the biggest, other adolescent treatment providers.
So like pediatricians?
No, like substance abuse treatment providers. So here in Frederick, there are about 3 adolescent IOP programs. And we know there's some in Montgomery County who've been good referral sources for us. And then the school system, the local court system.
You said that when the student and the parent or caregiver, whomever, come and you're showing them around, do they have an opportunity to meet with another student?
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially when the student is really not too thrilled or psyched to be here, I'll tend to, pluck one of the students that I think this potential student might really connect with and say, hey, why don't you guys go have a chat, go talk, share your experience, what this has been like, answer some of their questions, because they're going to want to hear from their peer, not from their,
principal
wisdom highlighted possible school principal.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I mean, I know from personal experiences, I'm sure you guys know, the power of just one person in recovery talking to another person in recovery. I would imagine that is probably every bit, if not more powerful for children.
More powerful for them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
I mean, to think about it, like, when we were teenagers, like, I didn't want to listen to my mom. I didn't want to listen to my dad. Like, they knew nothing. My friends knew everything. My parents knew nothing. If a peer came to me, I'm not likely to listen to them.
Yeah, no, it's like, hey, mom and dad, I can't even, how did you live this life? You know what I mean? It's what you don't know about my life. I'm so unique. My
now I got karma coming back at me with my 5-year-old.
Yeah, it's probably why I never had children of my own. Oh wow, that's crazy. So, what's the goal? What's our future to, like, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goal?
Yeah. So, this fall, we hope to be in a position where we are going to be opening our APG, our alternative peer group.
Sweet.
Yeah. And how we envision that is after school programming. Come hang out. It's a safe, sober space. Hang out, play ping pong, play foosball, play some video games. If you need some tutoring, maybe we've got tutoring going on here. Recovery meetings, sometimes outings, things like that. So we're hoping to have that up and running.
When you get to a place where you're ready to broadcast that, will you reach out to us so that we can
Yes.
that on our social medias? And
yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so hopefully this fall, that'll be up and running.
Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah, that's like super exciting stuff. And yeah, whatever you can send that is, repostable. I'd love to start posting about some of these things. I think what you're doing is remarkable. And I hope it's the start of something that we see more and more of, because I think our children, I think about how much I was exposed to, and I was just grew up in the burbs, right? Like, I didn't grow up in a rough part of town. I didn't grow up in middle America. I had a pretty standard upbringing, right? And I think about the kind of things I was doing at the ages of these students. And I think my sister's son just turned 13, and I look at him and I see a child, you know, and so I think our children are ever more being exposed to things that they probably shouldn't be privy to so young. Whatever any of us can do to help connect them to resources is probably the right thing.
Yeah.
You guys want a big injection of hope?
Duh.
Yeah.
Always.
Love hope.
So there's a recovery high school that's percolating in Baltimore right now.
I heard about this.
They did. Yeah,
We just interviewed the person too.
T told us about it, right?
She sure did.
Do you know T?
Yes.
She's
awesome.
T. She's one of my favorite people ever.
Yeah, she's legit.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're connected to her. Yeah.
Oh God. I'm talking about a place around here that would be so good for kids to have a place to go. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Baltimore, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Right. I know. To have two recovery high schools in the state, and yeah.
It's huge. I personally think we're really blessed in this area. I mean, there's a ton of bad, but there's a ton of recovery in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hard pressed to not be able to like pick up the phone, hit a couple clicks, and you're within moments of getting connected if the desire is there.
I'm just saying, Gen X, when we went sober, it was like, yeah, buddy. First, we were all about anarchy, and now we're all about recovery.
Oh yeah,
right. And you know, it's funny when I got sober, and I sometimes joke with the students about this. I'm like, when I got sober, there were still phone books. Do you know what a phone book is? Like, I had to help in a phone book.
Oh yeah, we were getting tangled up in the phone wires, and there was MTV.
MTV still exists, my friends. Like yeah,
but the internet kind of gets in the way of MTV.
Let's tell it. Yeah, but these are true stories. I mean, when I was in high school, you were big shit if you had a pager.
Yes. Yep.
Which, by the way, was like the dumbest invention ever.
Ever.
I mean, like, I'm going to page you, and then I'm going to need you to stop at any one of any random telephone booths anywhere. Call me back.
Yeah. It was the best thing for drug dealing, though.
100%. But we're not going to talk about that because I don't know what the statute of limitations is.
Well, so
right now.
So actually, we'll go down a different path.
Let's go a different path. I like that better.
Yeah. So one of the things, so I visited, my assistant and I visited Phoenix Recovery Academy 2 weeks ago, and you showed us around. And so there were a couple of things that you said that really stuck out with me. One is that Maryland state law says that you can be up to 21 to graduate from a high school instead of getting a GED. So like, I did not know that. And this is something that, I mean, young people in recovery, you know, like struggling with addiction, like people drop out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to. Like, if you don't want to take your GED, which I've learned is really, really hard. Like, my hat's off to people who do that. Like, that's not an easy path to take. There is a law in the state of Maryland that if you, so say I were to enroll an 18-year-old, because people tend to think like high school ends when you turn 18. In the state of Maryland, even if you're 18, you have until the age of 21 to graduate high school to get your diploma.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And so you could be 18, 19, 20. So we could enroll a 19-year-old in this school, and they would have like 1.5, 2 years to obtain the credits that they need to obtain to graduate. So as long as they have enough credits previously, you know, so like at 19, it can't be all 4 years, but if you have maybe just 1 year left of credits that you need to do, or 2 even, you can enroll. and you can get your high school diploma. You
Yeah,
have until 21.
that's pretty wild. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool, though.
Can you imagine like what sort of accomplishment that would be? Like
Yeah,
to
especially
think that
because
you were going to
there's,
have to get a GED or like be permanently derailed because you didn't, like your addiction like took you right out to the streets or wherever.
yeah, and there's a huge stigma around that too, right? Like, so I'm going to be a 19-year-old high school student, so like with most of the subject matter we're talking about, there's just a ton of stigma around it. But, hey, if that's an opportunity for any individual to get an actual diploma instead of the GED, that's pretty wild.
So that brings me to my next question. Okay. We only have a little bit of time left.
Are you dropping the 2 on her?
No, I'm gonna drop this one first. Oh man. Okay, there's so much. Okay.
No.
So I, like I got sober when I was 20. This is important to me, right? Like I graduated high school, by the skin of my teeth. I enrolled at the Mount here in Emmitsburg, and I wasn't able to stay because my addiction got in the way, right? And so I got sober. I tried to go back to school like 2 years later at Purdue, where I was living at the time. And I could not stay sober and go to college, so I made like a really hard choice. I dropped out of college again. Like all I ever wanted was to be like a psychologist, right? And it's like, oh, I can't do this, like the greatest failure of my, of what I thought was my life, right? And so, like I go to school, drop out, and then I start working in finance, and which I did really, really well at, and I was taking classes at night. Like I just graduated. This is not about like kudos or anything. Like I'm saying like I'm 23 years in recovery, and I just graduated with my bachelor's degree from Purdue in psychology. Like that was a really long, hard road to haul, and like colleges, there are recovery programs for kids so that they don't have to walk the same footpath that I walk. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. And congratulations, Joanna, by the way.
Thank you.
New degree. That's fantastic. So yes, there are probably about 50-ish recovery high schools all across the country. There are probably about 150 collegiate recovery programs across the country.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know this until, I didn't know recovery high schools existed, and then I didn't know collegiate recovery programs existed. But they do, and they take all different kinds of shapes and sizes and forms. And some can range from a big center on campus that has recovery meetings, that also has sober housing, that has counselors, big kind of programs, to smaller versions of it, like an office at the student center that has connections to meetings and things of that nature. And they look different based on the school, based on the program, things like that. But they do. I mean, and they're growing pretty rapidly. I mean, they're popping up. Colleges are starting to understand that this is needed. They're really starting, colleges and universities are really starting to wrap their heads around the fact that, I think, this is my theory, this is just my theory, is that, for retention of students, that they need to offer these programs and support. And it's fantastic. It's wonderful. One of our students is looking into a collegiate recovery program where she's going to college.
How would someone find a collegiate recovery program?
So there is, just like the Association of Recovery Schools has their national association website, there is the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, ARHE, and they have a website. and you can look up and you can connect to their national organization. You can find the programs that exist, or even if they're looking at, a college or a university, they can look to see, is there a collegiate recovery program here at the school?
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of want to go, I have only got one more question and before the 2 questions. Do we think we have enough time?
Only one way to find out.
Let's find out. Okay. So
Do it.
when we were there, you told us a story about a culinary student. Can you tell us about this? Because I think that is so impactful.
It is. It's really, it is. Thank you. And man, it's perfect last question, because it encapsulates all of it. So we were doing a tour with a student, potential student, and his mom, and he was reluctant and not so into this, and became a little more open to the idea and the possibility, a little bit more willingness. And he looked at me and he looked at his mom, and he said, look, I'd be open to this, but he's taking a culinary course through his school, and it was the only class that he loved. He said, this is really what's keeping me going right now. He said, I don't want to give this up. I don't want to give this up, which kind of sparked something in me. And I said, look, I can't promise anything, but let me do some research. Let me see what I can do. Let me see if I can't do something similar here. Let me see. And then I tap on the shoulder of my development director, and I said, how do we do this? And we were able to create a similar program for the students. And here's what we did was we took a look at the curriculum that he was currently working from. And he and I sat down and I said, okay, can you highlight for me what you want to learn in your culinary? And he highlighted. Fabulous. This is now your curriculum. Is there anything in here that you don't see that you want to learn? He said, yeah. And he wrote that down. Okay, cool. Here's your curriculum. Our development director has a connection with the rescue mission that is right up the street from us. And they serve meals to, over 300 people every day. And he connected to them and said, look, we've got a student here who's really interested in culinary, wants to possibly pursue this as a career, wants to come to our school, but this is what's really holding him back. We want to try to provide this experience for this student. And they worked with us and have been wonderful to work with. And they took a look at the curriculum and they said, okay, we can roll this. So we worked it out. And then we got a community volunteer to help transport this student during his second period class, 3 days a week, up to the rescue mission to learn all these culinary techniques and also serve lunch to the people up there.
That is so amazing. Wasn't that a good question?
Yeah, no, that was a good question.
I'm impressed. Okay, so we got the final 2. Okay, so this one is purely personal. At the end of your career, when you're wrapping it up, what do you hope what is the legacy you hope to have left?
I hope just that, to be able to have instilled hope in individuals and families. That I want to be able to have instilled some hope.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's magic. Look how I did that.
Right?
Well played.
Okay, so then the last question is, for anybody who wants to reach out to you, who wants to reach out to the Phoenix Recovery Academy, how do they do that?
Fabulous. Thank you for asking. So they can give the school a call. School's phone number is 301-644-2140, or they can also reach out to me on my cell phone, which is 202-236-7592, or via email, and it's Varga, VARGA, at phoenixrecoveryacademy.org.
Beautiful. And is phoenixrecoveryacademy.org your website?
Yes, that is our website as well.
Okay. Oh, this has been such a great afternoon.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Amy and Joanna, thank you both so much. I really have enjoyed myself. I really appreciate this. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Thank you for this service.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I just appreciate your time for sure.
Indeed.
And yours as well. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank
Take
you
care.
very much for logging in. Have a great week.